They told her to stay in the shadows, mop the floors, keep her head down. She wasn't born to stand on that stage, just to clean it. Every night, while prodigies played under chandeliers, she listened from behind the curtains, fingers twitching, heart screaming. No one knew that the janitor in gray once had a dream louder than thunder, to make a piano weep, to make it sing. But dreams don't belong to the poor. Not here, not in this world. So when she wheeled a broken, dusty piano into the Royal Conservatory's grand hall and sat down to play, they laughed. Cameras rolled. "This'll be good," someone sneered. Then came the first note, off-key, wounded, then another, and another, until the music became a confession, so raw, so personal that the room forgot to breathe. What did she play? Why did one judge whisper, trembling, "We just witnessed history"? And how did a cleaner, with no training, no support, and a piano, held together with duct tape, beat every last golden boy in the competition? Don't look away. Don't scroll. Because if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or told to stay in your place, her story will set your soul on fire, and when you hear that final note, you'll understand why no one could clap fast enough. The Royal Conservatory of London stood like a cathedral of perfection, its white columns kissing the sky, its iron gates sharp with legacy. Inside, everything gleamed, mahogany floors polished to a mirror, glass chandeliers trembling with light, and students draped in cashmere and confidence. Every morning, at exactly 5:10 a.m., before the first violin string was tuned or the first espresso was poured, Evelyn Hart walked through those gates unnoticed. She wore no badge of genius, just a gray uniform, black sneakers, a mop handle slung like a rifle across her shoulder. Her ID read custodial staff, but her eyes gave her away. They lingered too long on the Steinway in Studio B, flinched slightly when someone missed a note, and on days when no one was looking, they closed, as if reliving a memory, note by note. She was 26, a silhouette in a palace of sound. By 6 a.m., the conservatory came alive. Voices, instruments, doors opening like applause. Evelyn faded into the background, vacuuming under harp strings, replacing tissue boxes in practice rooms that smelled of rosine and rain. No one ever asked her name, but every night after her shift ended, when the last cello case had rolled out and the hall fell back into stillness, Evelyn stayed. Room 214 had an upright piano no one used anymore. It sat slightly out of tune, 2 keys dead, its lid dented like a battered soldier. She found it in storage, half buried under a broken snare and a cracked viola case. No one cared, so she claimed it. There, in the shadows, she played. She never practiced other people's music, not scales, not Mozart, not Debussy. She played what she couldn't say out loud. The music was clumsy sometimes, wild other times, but it was alive. Notes that trembled with grief, soared with longing, dipped into jazz like her father used to hum on late nights home from the garage. When she played, she wasn't invisible, not even to herself. Evelyn's life hadn't always been this quiet. Once she'd been the loudest thing in her building, a little girl pounding on a junkyard piano in a crumbling Birmingham flat. Her fingers danced across broken ivories while her mother coughed in the next room, and her father prayed for more work. She was self-taught, raw. Her first melody had been written at age 9, scrawled on the back of an electric bill. By 12, she was improvising lullabies for her baby brother. By 15, she was playing in secret, until the piano was sold for heating money and music became another luxury they couldn't afford. That dream, it didn't die. It was buried. Now she was the cleaner of dreams. Until one morning, everything changed. She was wiping down the stage floor after a student showcase when a gust of wind, or fate, blew a paper across the tiles. A bright flyer, almost mocking. Young Virtuosos Competition, preliminary auditions open to all. Show us what you've got. She froze. Open to all? A beat passed. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear, but from memory. The calluses never left. Evelyn picked up the flyer, folded it into her pocket like a secret. And for the rest of that day, the sound of the mop dragging across the marble floor was a rhythm she couldn't stop humming to. The seed had been planted, and in her silence, something ancient began to stir. The flyer burned a hole in her pocket all day. Open to all. Those 3 words rang louder than the grand organ in the main hall. That night, Evelyn didn't go home. She waited until the last rehearsal ended, until the echo of cello strings faded from the marble corridors. Then, she made her way to room 214. She opened the lid of the old upright with the reverence of someone exhuming a body. Dust drifted into the golden light leaking from a hallway window. Her fingers hovered. Could she still do it? She pressed the first note. It squeaked, wobbled, but it was a beginning. She played another, then another. Her hands moved slowly, remembering pain before grace. And then, it came. Not a song, but a confession. A flood of aching harmonies, jazz-inflected turns, long silences between phrases like held-in sobs. She wasn't just playing, she was bleeding. In chords, in rhythm. Every night that followed, she returned. Room 214 became her sanctuary, her battleground, her altar, she wrote. Not with sheet music, but with instinct, memory, hurt. The melody that took shape was unlike anything taught inside those walls. It started like a lullaby her mother once hummed when fever made her delirious, then veered into a minor key, then a blues riff, then silence again. She called it the janitor's sonata, and then someone heard her. The door opened a crack one night. Amara Delacroix, 3rd-year piano major, daughter of a concert legend, stood there with raised eyebrows. "What are you doing in here?" Her voice had that lacquered politeness of someone used to backstage passes and first-row tickets. Evelyn stiffened. "Just cleaning." Amara stepped inside, looking around like she'd discovered graffiti in a cathedral. "That piano's not for student use or staff." Evelyn didn't reply. Amara tilted her head. "You were playing something. A bit unrefined, but interesting." Her tone sharpened. "You're not thinking of auditioning, are you?" Evelyn said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Amara laughed. It wasn't cruel, just dismissive, like watching a toddler try on heels. "Well, break. A leg, I guess." And she was gone. The next day, whispers floated through the conservatory like dust in sunlight. The janitors entering the young virtuosos. With what? A mop solo? Maybe it's some performance art. Poverty aesthetic. One student filmed Evelyn wiping windows, added text. "This year's wildcard entry. Virtuoso vibes. Gone from broom to boom." The clip went viral overnight. Even the faculty began to murmur. At a lunch table, a voice. "There should be standards. This isn't a talent show." Another. "She's passionate, I hear." A chuckle. "So is my dog when it sees a squirrel." Mr. Quinn, the stage manager, pulled her aside one evening. "You're really going through with this?" She nodded, quiet but firm. He sighed, scratched his neck. "You got guts. But guts don't count for much when the wolves are out." Still, she played. She practiced through aching wrists, through rumors, through the gnawing shame of being watched. Like a walking meme. And then came the piano. The conservatory wouldn't lend her one. She couldn't rent, couldn't buy. So she returned to the storage room. There, under old drums and broken music stands, she found the battered upright. One leg missing, top cracked, a few keys stuck like old memories. She dragged it into room. Thuriwartin sanded it herself, tightened the strings, taped the E4 key to respond, used coins to weigh the pedal, made it hers. A week before auditions, she asked for 5 minutes to test the stage acoustics. The hall was empty. Until it wasn't. A group of students gathered, phones in hand. She's actually serious. She brought that thing? Someone. Get this on live stream. Evelyn sat at the piano. Her hands trembled. The laughter grew, then she began to play, and even the giggles faltered. It wasn't clean. It wasn't refined. It was real. Each note was a scar, each chord a scarlet letter. By the end of her test run, the room was quiet, not with reverence but with confusion, as if no one knew what they'd just witnessed. Mr. Quinn stood in the back, arms folded. He didn't smile, but he didn't stop her either. That night, Evelyn walked home through the London fog, head high. Her hands smelled like wood polish and sweat, but her heart smelled like stage light. The morning of the preliminary audition arrived like a thunderclap. Evelyn stood outside the grand hall with her piano strapped to a rusted dolly. The cracked wood creaked as she rolled it across the cobblestone courtyard of the Royal Conservatory. A guard at the door looked up, then down at the contraption, raising an eyebrow. "You're here for the audition?" She nodded. He blinked. "Right. Good luck." Inside, the lobby buzzed like a hive of designer scarves and practiced posture. Contestants sipped warm water, humming scales like ritual chants. Parents in cashmere murmured to faculty in polished tones. And Evelyn, wearing the same black pants she used to mop the auditorium, wheeled her bruised piano through the crowd like a ghost dragging a coffin. Gasps, whispers. A phone camera flashed. She was no longer just a curiosity. She was an embarrassment to the legacy, to the image, to the illusion that talent always came with a tuition bill. Who let her in? Is this a stunt? "She's going to ruin the mood before I go on." Evelyn said nothing. She had no entourage, no sheet music, just one name on the list. Contestant under 39. Evelyn Hart, title of piece, the janitor's Sonata backstage. She tuned the keys by ear, taped a loose pedal. Her fingers bled slightly from a splinter in the wood. She didn't flinch. She wasn't afraid of pain. She was afraid of silence. The kind of silence that followed someone's laughter at your expense. The kind that came after being told you weren't born for more. A bell rang. Her number was called. The curtain parted. Evelyn wheeled the piano onto the polished wood floor of the Royal Conservatory's grand audition hall. 3 judges sat beneath gold trim. One was a retired composer. Another, a world-renowned performer. The third, Lady Clarice Penwell, was a former royal court pianist and the embodiment of highbrow skepticism. She glanced at the piano, then at Evelyn's shoes. "Begin when ready," the moderator said flatly. Evelyn sat, took a breath. "Play like you've got 5 minutes to change the world." She placed her hands on the keys. The first note was flawed, sharp, ragged. Gasps in the back row. One judge shifted in his seat, but then came the second, the third. A strange hush began to take shape. The janitor's sonata was not built for elegance. It was forged in hardship. It began in minor chords, slow and trudging like footsteps through a night shift. Then came dissonance. Aggressive clashes, jazz accents biting into classical scales. It fought with itself. It wept, surged, stopped short, then exploded into a riff so alive, so fiery, it made even Clarice Penwell lower her pen. Evelyn leaned into every key, not as a technician, but as someone begging the room to hear what no words could say. A crack in the piano shrieked mid-piece. She didn't stop. She leaned into it, adjusting tempo, absorbing the flaw into the phrasing. It became part of the music, her way of saying, "This is what life does. It breaks you. You play anyway." Her fingers flew through a storm of syncopation, then landed on a soft, vulnerable melody, the same her mother once hummed during winter power outages. Tears welled in the eyes of a junior judge. Even the air seemed to freeze. Then, silence. The piece ended on a single, suspended note that echoed like a question left unanswered. No one moved. Then the moderator whispered, unsure, "Thank you, Ms. Hart." She stood, bowed slightly. The room burst. Not into polite applause, but into shockwave clapping, a rising thunder from the back rows forward. Even students who had mocked her stood. Phones were out, TikTok flooded. Live streams caught fire. She just punched through the floor of this place with a piano made of splinters. Who is she? That was pain. That was beauty. That was not just a janitor, but not all were pleased. Backstage, Evelyn passed Amara, who stood frozen. "You got lucky," Amara said quietly, voice tight. "No," Evelyn replied. "I got heard." Minutes later, the judges' decisions were announced. Only 5 would proceed to the finals. 4 names expected. Then the last, contestant number 39, Evelyn Hart, gasps. A judge commented to press, her piece wasn't perfect. But it was true. That's rarer. By the time Evelyn stepped outside, and the janitor's Sonata was trending globally, news outlets wrote headlines like, "Cleaner stuns classical world with original composition." The most honest music you'll hear this year came from a broken piano, but Evelyn didn't read them. That night, back in room 214, she sat quietly with the old piano, ran her fingers along the keys. Then she began composing again, because the war wasn't over, it had only begun. The finals were set for 1 week later, Royal Albert Hall, a stage carved from legend where symphonies had lived and died, where applause echoed like holy hymns, and now Evelyn Hart would stand there. But triumph, as it turned out, came with a sharper edge than failure. In the days that followed her shocking advancement, praise poured in. Yes, but also poison. The online world split down the middle. From Op to Mozart trended beside, mockery of music. Critics on TV panels raised their eyebrows. She's a story, not a standard. Emotion is lovely. But does she even read sheet music? She represents chaos, not craft. Inside the conservatory, things grew colder. Students who once smirked now went silent in her presence, but not out of respect, out of fear, resentment. Because for the first time, their talent wasn't enough, not against truth. And then came the whisper campaign. Someone leaked her file. No formal training, no diploma, no credentials. Rumors spread that the judges were pressured to include her for publicity, that the board feared being branded elitist, exclusionary, irrelevant. A day before the final, Evelyn arrived at the conservatory to find her practice slot revoked. When she asked why, the administrator offered only a tight smile. Apologies, schedule conflict. Worse, her battered upright was gone from room 214, confiscated. No unauthorized instruments are allowed in conservatory spaces, the memo read. She stood there, staring at the empty corner where music once lived. It was a message. Know your place. Know your limits. That night, she considered withdrawing. She sat on the floor of her flat, hands trembling, surrounded by scribbled sheet fragments. Her neighbors played loud TV upstairs. Sirens wailed outside. The silence inside her grew deafening. Then, a knock on the door. She opened it to find Professor Alaric Maynard, a former jazz pianist turned reclusive theorist, known for sabotaging his own career by refusing to bow to tradition. He held something, wrapped in cloth. "I hear you've been evicted from your own sound," he said, stepping in. He unwrapped the bundle, a portable handcrafted keyboard, one he built himself after his stroke took half the strength from his left hand. "She's sensitive, unpredictable, kind of like you." Evelyn stared. "Why are you helping me?" He shrugged. "Because I remember the first time I was told I didn't belong, and the first time I played anyway. They practiced all night. Together, her instinct, his structure. He taught her how to ride chaos without drowning in it. She taught him how to feel again." By morning, Evelyn had reshaped her sonata, rewriting passages, folding in echoes of Rachmaninoff with drops of Coltrane. She created something new, not a rebellion, not a plea, but a conversation. Final day, Royal Albert Hall. Backstage, Amara Delacroix adjusted her gloves. Her Steinway waited, pre-tuned to perfection. She caught sight of Evelyn and snorted. "You brought that? What is it, a toy?" Evelyn simply smiled. "It sings better than you think." A hush fell as she stepped onto the iconic stage. The house was packed. Judges, critics, scholars, influencers, skeptics. Lady Clarice Penwell watched through opera glasses, her face a porcelain mask. Evelyn sat. The lights dimmed, and she began. This time the sonata didn't weep. It refused. The opening was deliberate, a dissonant clash that demanded attention. Then came a fugue, winding through heartbreak like vines through ruins. She layered in syncopation. Unexpected, dangerous. The audience leaned forward. And then, silence. She paused, hands above the keys. People shifted, confused. Then she struck. A jazz progression so complex, so electric, it was audacious. The room gasped. She played with fury, with grace, with all the weight of every locked door she'd ever faced. And in the final movement, she quoted Amara's own performance from the semifinals, but twisted it, made it mournful, unfinished. Amara flinched in the wings, then final note, it was imperfect, cracked and exactly right. For a moment no one moved, then one clap. Then two. Then the dam broke. The hall erupted. Not just in applause, in cheers, in sobs, in standing fury. The judges rose, even Lady Penwell stood. Slowly, her lips parted. Later, a journalist asked her, "Why did you stand?" She replied simply, "Because she didn't just play, she answered us." The morning after the finals, London woke up different. The rain had stopped. The air felt sharper, cleaner. And the headlines screamed, "Janitor redefines genius at Royal Albert Hall." Evelyn Hart's piano left a city breathless, a sonata born from silence, played into legend. Across social media, her performance was being replayed on loop. Musicians reacted in tears. Veterans called her the rebirth of the honest composer. Teenagers edited her final crescendo over clips of underdogs scoring. Last-minute goals. Protesters used her melody as the backing track for their calls against elitism in the arts. Something shifted. And Evelyn? She was back at work the next day, not out of duty, out of choice. She moved through the conservatory hallways, mop in one hand, scholarship letter in the other. She'd been offered full admission, a living stipend, a personal mentor, Maynard. Of course, but Evelyn didn't rush to accept. She sat alone in room 214, looking at the empty space where her broken piano used to live. A knock. Mr. Quinn entered, holding a key. "Storage," he said gruffly. "We didn't throw it out." Thought, "You might want her back." Her heart jumped. They brought the piano in, still scarred, still stubborn, but hers. Later that week, the conservatory held a private ceremony. No fanfare, no press, just students, faculty, staff. The headmaster, stone-faced and traditional, cleared his throat. "Miss Hart," he began, "you've reminded us that brilliance isn't always born where we expect it. Sometimes it hides in quiet corners." Waiting, he turned. A plaque was unveiled beside room 214, Evelyn Hart practice room in honor of grit, truth, and sound. Amara didn't attend the ceremony, but she did leave a handwritten note on Evelyn's piano days later. "You weren't just better, you were freer. I'm still learning how to play like that." Evelyn never mentioned it to anyone. She didn't need to. The invitation came weeks later, Carnegie Hall, a composer's showcase. They wanted her to close the night. She stood in the dressing room under soft lights wearing a simple black dress. No jewelry, no makeup, just her calloused hands and a story. Maynard stood beside her. "Are you ready?" he asked. She looked in the mirror, thought of her parents, her tiny flat, the keys that once stuck beneath her 9-year-old fingers, and she smiled. "I was always ready. The world just took a little longer to listen." She walked on stage. This time, the piano gleamed, perfectly tuned. She sat and played. But it wasn't the janitor's sonata. It was something new, softer, brighter, still haunting but healing. A piece about rising without resentment, about finding your voice in a world that told you to stay silent, about every soul who scrubbed floors with symphonies in their head. When she finished, the hall didn't just applaud. They stood as if rising to meet her, to say, "We see you now." Back in London, room 214 became a quiet sanctuary for students who didn't fit. The awkward ones, the unsure ones. the ones who'd been laughed at. They found her there sometimes, still in her gray coat, still sipping tea from a chipped mug, still teaching with more silence than speech. She never became flashy, never chased the spotlight, but her music played in concert halls across the world, and on rainy nights in tiny apartments, in bedrooms where dreams waited in the dark, her sonata gave courage to fingers trembling above cheap keyboards. Because Evelyn Hart had proved something that night, that the size of your name means nothing. It's the size of your truth that echoes. Forever. Fade out. Piano note. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt invisible, unheard, or not born into the right world, then maybe Evelyn's sonata isn't just hers anymore. Maybe it belongs to all of us, the quiet fighters, the late bloomers, the ones still waiting for a door to open. Share this with someone who needs to remember their voice matters, even if it's cracked, even if it's late, even if no one's listening yet. Because sometimes the most powerful music comes from those no one saw coming.